Safe to Serve family. Today is Friday. The Bible calls it Preparation Day. If Christ were here today, what would he say? I believe he would say, watch and pray. So don't be like the disciples in Gethsemane. Let's heed the warning to watch and pray without delay. If not, you will deny Jesus, and him you will betray. The rooster is crowing night and day, saying, get ready without delay. Let's implement the 5 keys of survival without delay, because Jesus is on his way. This is the overview. Watch and pray.
As the United States celebrates the 250th anniversary of its foundation, you have chosen to consider the contribution of Catholicism to this beloved country.
You know, the way I see it, I think our social doctrine is the perfect antidote to what ails our culture.
There are some very angry voices out there trying to convince us breathlessly that there must be a rigid separation between church and state.
On this 250th anniversary of our country, I would, at the risk of extravagance, go even further to observe America's intrinsically Catholic character. As Professor Berzer has already observed, the Jesuits smuggled the teachings of the Thomists to Thomas Jefferson. And inclined as I am to criticize the Jesuits, we have to admit they're a clever bunch and they get results. It's very impressive.
But I do believe there has been a coup and it's been taken over. And if I want to, if I can, I want to just put the date in my mind. And anybody could pick probably any date in the last 100 years. But I have picked November 22nd, 1963.
What happened?
But I do.
The Founding Fathers would probably scratch their heads at the notion of a Catholic prayer breakfast in our nation's capital, and I am certain that they are spinning in their graves as their papist descendant addresses a room full of mackerel snappers in the nation's capital.
Do this, but back at the founding of this country, before we were a nation, most states, colonies back then, had laws that required you to be in church on Sunday, right? They were not tolerant of non-believers. And so this idea that we should just accept everybody and everything, that's a modern idea. It comes from Satan and it is destroying our country. We have to become a lot less tolerant. We are way too tolerant as a people and a nation.
Safe to Serve family. Welcome to this midday power surge, your spiritual oasis on this pilgrim journey. Welcome one, welcome all to this midday power surge. Those video clips are simply the tip of the iceberg. You're going to see how close we are to the enforcement of the mark of the beast, the close of probation, the second coming of Jesus Christ. And as I go throughout this lesson today, I'm going to separate each segment with the rooster giving that alert, that alarm, the rooster crowing. Just as it was on that Friday, it was that rooster that was used as a judgment call to Peter. And friends, we have come on this Friday for this all-important life and death message for this midday power surge. I'm going to be addressing the fact that now we're seeing at the most recent, a few days ago, yesterday, the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. The Pope, Jesuits, and Catholics boasted that Roman Catholics now control the United States of America. Yes? That Jesuits control the US in 2026, and this will continue beyond. And they're calling for the complete formation, union of church and state, and then to implement, to enact, enforce Sunday worship by law. And while that is happening, we also have the Speaker of the House making similar statements, Mike Johnson. We also have prominent evangelical, apostate Protestants who are saying it's time now for American Christians to be intolerant to non-believers. I'm going to share with you how Roman Catholics in America and apostate Protestants, evangelicals in America have the same spirit of barbarism, the same spirit of the dragon, just as the prophecy says it would take place. Chapter 13 of Revelation, verse 11 and verse 12. And of course, verse 15 to verse 17. This is a very in-depth lesson, so please, friends, stay tuned. If I don't cover everything, you know I will do the rest on tomorrow for our Sabbath services. Let's get right into it, shall we? This is the National Prayer Breakfast. This is the Pope's ambassador, the Pope's mouthpiece, the Pope's envoy, who will relay the Pope's message at this so-called breakfast, this feast, this meal. Clip 1. Watch carefully. He will speak about the calling for of a new evangelization. In other words, we must make America Catholic, just as previous Pope said, like John Paul II, which confirms the current Pope is simply carrying on the legacy of previous popes. Listen.
Holy Father writes to the participants in the 2026 National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. Dear friends, your initiative was born as a response to the call of St. John Paul II for a new evangelization, namely to re-evangelize cultures that were previously Christianized long ago with methods that are appropriate to our own time.
I must confess that I had knowledge of what happened yesterday, but we had something else planned for the Make It Plain podcast. By the way, go watch that. It is very startling. And it would take us too much time to get this in for that lesson on yesterday. So friends, here it is. Number 2, many times when these prominent folks speak, they use language, verbiage that belong to their tyrannical vernacular. And unless you are aware of those words and phrases, you won't have knowledge of what they're telling you. In other words, they can be looking in your eyes and telling you, we are going to persecute, we are going to murder you. But because you don't understand the language, their vernacular, it goes over your head. And that's why today I'm going to explain what this so-called new evangelization mean that they're calling for that must take place in cultures that were once Christian but have now become secular. Are people now lamenting that America is way more secular today than in previous decades? Yes, it's time to make America Catholic. Listen now, it's on the screen. That's John Paul II statement, his writings on the so-called new evangelization. All right, the last bullet point says, the Pope urged for a new approach in countries, countries, right, with deep Christian roots. Is that not America? That had grown secular, indifferent, and now the Pope is demanding a re-evangelization of that culture. Pause right there. As a SDA Christian, God sends me to go and evangelize. While I am evangelizing, do I make people remain in their false religion? No. Is it my duty to let them remain in their false Christian denomination? No. It means to make them also SDA Bible believing Christian. If that's clear, put in the comment section a nail in a sure place. So what is meant by re-evangelizing America? Come on, friends. Make America Catholic. Yeah, scratch your head. It's very clear now. Clip 2.
Time. This year in particular, as the United States celebrates the 250th anniversary of its foundation, you have chosen to consider the contribution of Catholicism to this beloved country.
Mercy.
Wherever she finds herself, the Church seeks to carry out her mission.
And what is the mission of the Roman Catholic hierarchy? The Pope, the Jesuit monks, the Augustinian monks, to which Pope Leo XIV belongs. It is to overthrow Protestantism. It is to make America subservient to the papacy and to bring about a papal domination, control of America and the world. And notice the context of that last statement. It is the context of America celebrating its 250th birthday, which comes July 4th, 2026. So from 2026 and beyond, make sure America is Catholic. Later on, I'm going to confirm. They are not saying make America Catholic as if it is something in the future. No. They will tell you America is already Catholic. I paused for the emphasis, STS Live, my family. These are troublous times. What I did, I dug into my archive and looked at previous so-called national Catholic prayer breakfasts and saw what was said then to be compared to what is said yesterday and now. I was not shocked, but I praise the Lord because former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, a Roman Catholic, made this statement in the year 2018. And while I share what Paul Ryan said, stay tuned because later on, I'm going to give you his contemporary, his counterpart today, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. But stay tuned for that. Let's address Paul Ryan right now. Paul Ryan also mentioned John Paul II aim, objective of this new evangelization. And Paul Ryan gave us its definition. It simply means to enact Roman Catholic social doctrine in America and make that the policy at the federal level, state level, town, local level. Watch carefully here. This is Paul Ryan, 2018, at the so-called prayer breakfast. Notice what he said right there, red words. Our social doctrine is the perfect antidote to what ails American culture. Beloved, then he said, it's time for Catholics to lead America. Lord have mercy. Beloved, what is the purpose of an antidote? Those who are live with me, what is an antidote? In other words, America is sick morally. America is sick spiritually. And the only way to heal them from this sickness, bring the antidote. And the antidote is the Roman Catholic social teaching. Common good, Sunday rest by law. Here's Paul Ryan. Here he is. 2018, the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. When God tells me to go back into my archive, you're in trouble by God's grace today. You watch. Paul Ryan, speak.
It's why this breakfast was founded in the first place. To heed what St. John Paul II called the new evangelization.
All right.
Cast out to the deep, he would say. Because again, We are so often stuck in the shallow end in survival mode. Our social doctrine, it doesn't answer instant answers. It doesn't produce instant answers to easy outcomes.
So notice he connected John Paul II's new evangelization with the Roman Catholic social teaching. If I did not define that for you, you would have no clue of what the Pope said at yesterday's national, not local, national Catholic prayer breakfast. These men are dangerous to our liberties, religious and civil. Paul Ryan, continue.
Because right now, at this time, there is a deeply serious problem that we see right now within our society. We see moral relativism becoming more and more pervasive in our culture.
That's it. So he nailed it. America is sick morally. Moral relativism. America is sick spiritually. It's clear. Next, Paul Ryan. We don't play games here, my friends.
If there was ever a time, if there was ever a place where Catholics, from the clergy to the laity, are needed, it is here and it is now, helping solve this problem, addressing this challenge. The other way I see it, I think our social doctrine is the perfect antidote to what ails our culture. It begins with a vision of a free and virtuous society.
Listen.
Not a set of policy prescriptions or even a toolkit for producing those prescriptions, but a vision of dignity and possibility. It's a vision that inspires us to serve the common good.
So notice the 3 steps. The Pope's new evangelization of America. Number 2, Roman Catholic social doctrine. Number 3, common good. It's right there. All 3. And this is the antidote for what ails America morally and spiritually. This is a physician you want to stay away from. The Pope is a so-called doctor you got to stay away from, because he is promoting malpractice. You go in for one symptom, ailment, infirmity, you may not come out. You will be dead on that table. Run from that hospital. Run from that operating room. Okay? Notice now, in this segment, same segment, I'm going to confirm to you from the mouths of Roman Catholics, when they say common good, they mean Sunday worship by law. Now, this is what I've always shown you, right? Catholic social teaching. What is it? The common good. Notice carefully. Give up your individual interests. You no longer have liberty of conscience. No longer have religious and civil liberties. Here it is now. Public authorities for the common good must enact Sunday worship by law. It's right there. Now, I've always given you that. But when the Lord led me to dig into my archives, I remembered this. This is J.D. Vance. What is he also promoting? As Vice President of America, he will use Roman Catholic social teaching to become the law and policy in America. Later on, when I get to Michael Knowles will mention J.D. Vance. Don't forget that. As showing, as an example, Roman Catholics have already taken over, have already controlled America, not evangelicals, not Protestants. This is a serious lesson. As I dug into my archive, look what I found. Oh, look what I found. Big on the screen. What is the Roman Catholic common good? Red words. Only those who recognize the common good has concerns for a man's soul can explain why we should legislate rest on Sunday. And they call Sunday the Lord's Day. You see it now? Blue words. In Poland, I wonder why Poland? In Poland, what happened? They restricted almost all Sunday shopping with a law backed by the Catholic Church and the so-called trade unions. Why Poland? Those who are alive with me, which pope hailed from Poland? Which premier pope hailed from Poland? Talk to me in the comment section. Let us engage with the content, my family, STS Live. Of course, it's John Paul II. Scroll down. Parker. Yes, Selma. Darnetta, Helen. It is John Paul II. Okay, watch carefully now. And which dragon prime minister? His roots, his father hailed from Poland. That dragon nation in the Middle East. So when they say common good, what are they calling for? Sunday worship by law at the federal level. Next, when I dig into my archive, you're in trouble, my friends. Right there, they call Sunday the Lord's Day. Look at the blue words at the bottom. Not only John Paul II, that Pope, but Pope Benedict XVI. He was also calling for Sunday rest, Sunday worship by law. Last sentence. For this reason, the Sabbath, which they call Sunday, is the heart of all social legislation. That means for workers' unions, Sunday worship. Labor unions, Sunday worship by law. Do you see it now? For morality to be returned to America, Sunday rest, Sunday worship by law. To bring back spirituality, Sunday rest, Sunday worship by law. To heal and to solve America's failing economy, to bring back prosperity, Sunday worship by law. To stop calamities, Sunday worship by law, my friends. And notice again, when they say common good, they also say the common good can be used to apply the death penalty. What? Yes. Common good also entails the death penalty. And that is not bizarre. That is not strange. Because anyone, based on history, who didn't go along with the Roman Catholic social teachings, her dogmas, her false teachings, were burnt at the stake. So this is not alien to say common good, death penalty. It's not foreign to say Catholic common good is the death penalty. Notice here, my
more
friends.
than 15 years.
Beloved, this is William Barr.
For more than 15.
This is William Barr. William Barr also spake at the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. At the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. And William Barr was the former U.S. Attorney General. And what was he calling for at that breakfast? The union of church and state. Everybody, look at the words in the red box. It mentions William Barr was promoting the common good. William Barr. So now, later on when I share with you, when the leaders are telling us America is already controlled by Roman Catholics, it is not a facade. We are here, and that's why on this Friday, as it was in Gethsemane, the cock crew. On this Friday, as it was at the hall of Pilate's judgment hall, the place of Annas and Caiaphas, the cock crew.
For more than.
Here it is, my friends. All right, with that in mind, now I'm going to segue. There was another premier U.S. official that spoke at the National Catholic Breakfast. I need to do a Google search. Could you kind of check to see if Mike Johnson is Catholic? Is Speaker Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, Catholic? Is he Catholic? Beloved, listen to what he says as he is promoting the union of church and state. Listen, clip one. Come on, preacher.
There are some very angry voices out there trying to convince us breathlessly that there must be a rigid separation between church and state. That phrase, as you all know, derives from not the Constitution, but a personal letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptist Association. Now, they take that phrase and they turn it around. Jefferson clearly did not mean that wall to keep religion from influencing our government and public life. To the contrary, the founders wanted to protect the church and the religious practice of citizens from an encroaching state, not the other way around.
So in other words, he's saying the state can't influence the church and members of society. But the church, its members and leaders, can influence the state. Before I give you more commentary, I went back into my files, my archive. When God sends me back into my archive, you're in trouble in a good way. Listen how Speaker Johnson is going to continue to attempt to justify heresy and deception. This was when he was just brought in as Speaker of the House, second in command to the president. Watch carefully here.
But Jefferson clearly did not mean that metaphorical wall was to keep religion from influencing issues of civil government. To the contrary, it was.
Now understand that, my friends. So what he's actually telling you is that it's okay for the church to influence the state. Let me give you one quick commentary. Because we are to be intelligent, articulate, as we address this crisis in America, politically and religiously. Based on the Bible, God's words clearly say the church can indeed influence the state. Yes, it can. Never you say the church cannot influence the state. It can, but how? The church can influence the state only in matters that bear upon the second table of the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments. For example, if the state is thinking about enacting sodomy laws, man with man, you get the point, woman with woman, church members can step in and say, politician, don't do that. Make sense? If the state wants to promote abortion, the church can step in. Why? Because it relates to the second table of the Decalogue. The fifth commandment says, honor thy father and mother. Didn't say honor thy father and father. Didn't say honor your two mothers. Amen. Didn't say thou shalt kill. Thou shalt not kill. All right? But now, the church cannot influence the state. The church cannot influence the state in matters of religion, in matters of worship, in matters on resting, in matters of faith. Man with his God, the first table of God's Decalogue. And Romans 13, verse 1 through verse 10 confirms that. So Speaker Mike Johnson is promoting heresy. Notice on the screen, when he says the church must influence the state, listen what he's saying. Not only on the second table, no, but the first table of the Decalogue. He is lamenting that church attendance is declining. So he's promoting church members and leaders to influence politicians, to force Americans to worship, to force Americans to go back to church. If you dare think I'm putting words in his mouth, look at that right there. If you think I'm putting words in his mouth, find that article and read that. Notice number 3. So much so, even Republicans had to protest Speaker Johnson. If you're so concerned about church attendance, then step down as Speaker of the House and go be a pastor. Is that point clear? And what is Kevin Roberts also pushing for? Sunday worship by law. What is Kevin Roberts promoting? Use politicians, the state, to force people to go back to church. Decline in church attendance. That's what they mean when they say the church can influence the state, force people to go to church. It's right there on Sunday. And it makes sense. Was that not what Paul Ryan was talking about? Yes. The new evangelization. America is immoral, licentious, not spiritual, and Roman Catholic social teaching is America's antidote. Common good. And that's why Trump made these statements. Here is Trump declining church attendance is what is on their minds. Church must influence state to force people to go back to church on Sunday.
Now allowed to use it. I get in there, you're going to be using that power at a level that you've never used it before. It's going to bring back the churchgoer. I mean, you have to see. I don't like the charts when I see charts where they're going in the wrong direction. We don't like that. We're going to bring it back. And I really believe it's the biggest thing missing from this country.
Okay. Beloved, I'm just warming up. In Great Controversy, page 445, the very aim and objective of Speaker Mike Johnson at the National Prayer Breakfast for Catholics and others is just what Inspiration said would take place in the last days. It's on the screen right now, which confirms, my family, STS Live, these are the last days. The leading churches, everybody listen attentively, the leading churches of America will be attempting to influence the state. Were those not the words of Speaker Mike Johnson? The church can influence the state. Now, Sister White just said the leading churches. Question. What are the leading churches in America? Those who are live with me, name for me the top 2, not even top 3, not even top 4. Name the top 2 leading churches in America. I'm going to wait on you, family. What are those 2 leading churches in America? Okay? Hey, Preacher Ryan, don't tell them. Okay, Oscar, John, Teresa, you got it. Nalik. It is simply Roman Catholics and Southern Baptists. And Caesar, you said what now? Speaker Mike Johnson belongs to the Southern Baptist Convention. This is a nail in a show place. As a matter of fact, if you Google it, SDA, I believe SDA is in the top 20, not top 10, not top 5, top 20, somewhere about number 16, number 17 on the list. Okay, come back here. So we are here, and then will come persecution for God's people. Again, here is Speaker Mike Johnson. Beloved, this is very deceptive. Listen.
It was meant to keep the federal government from impeding the religious practice of citizens.
Citizens. Don't forget that. I'll come back to it one more time.
It was meant to keep the federal government from impeding the religious practice of citizens. The founders wanted to protect the church from an encroaching state, not the other way around. The majority of the founders, having personally witnessed the abuses of the Church of England, were determined to prevent the official establishment of any single national denomination or religion. Of course, we know that.
Beloved, this is how you intelligently educate Speaker Mike Johnson. This man just said, the founders of America once resided in the old world, right? And that when they came to America, after what they encountered in the old world, right, in Europe, they now began to found a nation, and they put in principles. Then Mike Johnson said they wanted to be able to influence the state, but not allow the state to encroach upon Christians. So now we must believe today the church can influence the state, but the state must not encroach upon the church. What Speaker Mike Johnson is not telling you is that in the old world, it was the Roman Catholic Church that controlled the civil power. That's it. Again, in the old world, in Europe, it was the Roman Catholic Church that controlled the civil politicians, kings, queens, and rulers, princes in the nations. So when there was a time when the government in the old world was persecuting the Christians, it was not, one more time, it was not simply a state politicians persecuting Christians. It was church and state union that was persecuting the Christians. I'm going to confirm that right now. Before I do, I'll give you one more spiritual ammunition. Hear me carefully. One of the only times when there's not church-state union, but the state persecutes Christians. Listen, I want you to be intelligent. One of the only times in history and currently when there is not a church and state union, wherein the state persecutes Christians, is when the state is communist. Did you all catch that? It's only communist nations that persecute Christians, and it's not church and state union, because communism is state-sponsored atheism. Question now for Speaker Mike Johnson and these ignorant deceivers. Were the nations in Europe communist? Were the nations in Europe communist? France? We're talking about before 1798, because America received its independence 1776. Was England communist? Was Italy communist? Spain, Portugal, come on now. These were nations controlled by the church. Don't let them deceive you. In contrast, North Korea, communist, persecute Christians. In contrast, give me one, China, communist. What now? Muslim. But the Muslim countries were not the ones persecuting Christians. The Muslim countries were warring against primarily Roman Catholics. That's history. That's the fifth trumpet, the first woe. The Muslims were warring against Catholics because Catholics were warring against Muslims. That's history. That's history. And any Christians that were sympathetic to Catholics also felt the blow of Muslims. That's history. Cannot be refuted. Don't let these men deceive you. And even so, if they want to say Muslim country, is America Muslim? So how would that apply here? Deception on the screen, my friends. There it is. If you read this, it tells you, red words in the middle, for 1,000 years, roughly from the end of the Roman Empire to the Reformation, Rome, Roman Catholic Church, the Pope, was the one authority in the church. And that authority also encompassed the state. Do you know who said that? Bishop Barron. right now. That's confirmed. Don't let these men deceive you. Let's get back now. So just imagine a Southern Baptist went to a national Catholic prayer breakfast and promoting the very aims and objective of Jesuits, of the papists, of the black pope, the white pope. Just imagine in their minds, they must be smiling, saying, our aim was to overthrow Protestant America, but we did not know it would be so easy. Easy cheesy, as we would say in Jamaica. Easy does it. Watch carefully here.
There's some very angry voices out there trying to convince us breathlessly that there must be a rigid separation between church and state. That phrase, as you all know, derives from not the Constitution, but a personal letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptist Association. Now, they take that phrase and they turn it around. Jefferson clearly did not mean that wall to keep religion from influencing our government and public life. To the contrary, the founders wanted to protect the church and the religious practice of citizens from an encroaching state, not the other way around.
You're either ignorant or deceived. Who controlled the state? As a matter of fact, if people don't comprehend what I just said, come to America's history. Do you remember a man by the name of Roger Williams? Rhode Island? The Declaration of Independence, the first amendment to the U.S. Constitution? Was it not the state that was persecuting Roger Williams? But who was behind the state? The colonies. It was the church. Don't forget Speaker Mike Johnson mentioning Thomas Jefferson, because when I get to Michael Knowles is going to say the Jesuits controlled Thomas Jefferson, the third President of America, as an example that Catholics not will, but Catholics already control America. From 2026 and beyond, it's time for a Sunday law. Before I get there, this is Congressman Ron Paul. He will tell you there has been a coup. And before I get to him, here is JFK.
I believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute, where no Catholic prelate would tell the president, should he be Catholic, how to act, and no Protestant minister would tell his parishioners for whom to vote, where no church or church school is granted any public funds or political preference.
So what was JFK against? Catholics and or the National Council of Churches, evangelicals, Protestants, influencing the state to get the state to enact its institutions, yea, Sunday worship on the population. No wonder they assassinated the first Roman Catholic president. And here is Ron Paul telling us, since the assassination of JFK, America has been taken over. I wonder by whom? I wonder by whom? My friends, Ron Paul will tell you who he thinks has launched a coup on America. Ron Paul. Here he is. And you may read the words top left, but let me get to the video.
You know, there's been a coup. We don't have any resemblance to a government that believes in a republic. We don't have honest money. We don't have integrity. We don't even have people in Washington that even pretends, you know, that you're supposed to tell the truth. But I do believe there has been a coup and it's been taken over. And if I want to just put the date in my mind. And anybody could pick probably any date in the last 100 years. But I have picked November 22nd, 1963.
What happened on that day?
That was the day Kennedy was murdered by our government.
Wow.
And if you notice, I cut the audio right there, the video right there. If you go back to the video, preacher, the last sentence, top left, the last sentence, top left, he tells you who it is, who he thinks did it. It is that agency, that spy agency, the premier spy agency in America with 3 letters. And the 3 letters spell something else. It means Catholic Intelligence Agency. It also means Catholic in Action. Yes. On this Friday, the cock is crowing. Get ready without delay. Implement the 5 keys of survival. Here comes Michael Knowles. He was present at the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. Hear what he says. In this first clip, he will tell you, he himself is surprised how Catholics have so easily taken over America and now control America. Of course, he's going to add the forerunners, the progenitors of the Catholic movement to take over, control America, are now laughing in their graves. High fives to each other in their graves. How now Catholics have taken over America. But wait a minute. I thought Roman Catholics believe that their saints are in heaven. So how are they rolling in their graves? Anyway, that's the wine of Babylon. If you accept it, you'll become drunk, literally and spiritually. Give it to me, preacher. Michael Knowles, here he is.
The Founding Fathers would probably scratch their heads at the notion of a Catholic prayer breakfast in our nation's capital, and I am certain that they are spinning in their graves as their papist descendant addresses a room full of mackerel snappers in the nation's capital. And yet, I know that this popish turn of events would have raised some 18th century eyebrows. This nation was, after all, founded by men who felt that Henry VIII had not gone nearly far enough. Over the course of our history, legislators have banned Catholics from holding public office. The know-nothings took over state houses and the leadership of Congress. Yet today, if you count vice presidents and first ladies, we have now had baptized Catholics in the White House for 17 consecutive years. What a surprise it must be to the ardent Calvinists who settled our country that America would come not only to tolerate Catholics, not only to appreciate the contributions of Catholics, but even to elect them.
Calvinists? This man is talking about Protestants, evangelicals. He's surprised. Look at what Great Controversy, page 566 says. Protestants have tampered with and patronized popery. They have made compromises and concessions, which papists like Michael Knowles, which papists themselves are surprised to see and fail to understand. Easy cheesy. Michael Knowles is confirming from the very inception of America, the progenitors of this movement, his so-called church, the objective was to take over America. Look at the last sentence now. The people need, and that's why we come to Midday Power Surge. The people need to be aroused to resist the advances of this most dangerous, superlative, most dangerous foe to civil and religious liberty. And that's why STS, my family, let us share this as a witness to co-workers, family members, yes, classmates, neighbors, relatives, before it is too late. Michael Knowles, let's get back to him, my friends. Hear what he says now. The RCC aim is to make America Catholic. Come on.
On this 250th anniversary of our country, I would, at the risk of extravagance, go even further to observe America's intrinsically Catholic character.
Ho. America's intrinsic character? He's telling you America now has the characteristics of Roman Catholicism. Safe to serve life, which prophecy in the book of Revelation is connected to those words. America has the intrinsic, innate characteristics of Roman Catholicism. While you're praying and typing in the comment section, let me roll the clip. Here it is.
On this 250th anniversary of our country, I would, at the risk of extravagance, go even further to observe America's intrinsically Catholic character. If the claim sounds outrageous, please do not blame me. A man with greater authority than I made it first. That would be Alexis de Tocqueville, the most insightful and influential analyst of the American political order, who foresaw all the way back in 1831 that over time, the overwhelmingly Protestant Americans would trend in two directions when it came to religion.
Listen.
Some relinquishing Christianity entirely, in Tocqueville's words, and others returning to the bosom of the Church of Rome.
Mercy.
Despite all appearances, all protestations to the contrary, Tocqueville saw Catholicism as bound to take hold, primarily because America was democratic.
Democratic votes. Votes. That's one way we'll do it, by votes. Next point. He says, contrary to the protests, it is being done right now. Do you know why? The protest is over. You all missed that. He just said, contrary to people protesting against this objective, it is being done right now. Why? Because since 2016, Tony Palmer, with Pope Francis and Kenneth Copeland and others said in 2017, the 500th year since the Reformation, Martin Luther, the protest is over. That's what Michael Knott is telling you, my friends. The protest is over. Number two, and those who claim to be Protestants, they don't know what they're protesting against. And others have laid down the protest like many, not all, like many SDAs. And those who are, they don't put the nail in a sure place. Those who are trying, they don't hit the target. No bullseye. And for others, the so-called protest is lame, docile, it's tame, has no urgency, has no potency. Now, when he made that statement at the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, notice, he said, if my words sound bizarre and far-reaching, he said, I was not the first one who made this statement. He said, Alexis de Tocqueville made that prognostication, that prediction in the year 1831. Now, my family, do you know what I did? Do you know what? I went back to see who was Alexis de Tocqueville. Who was he? And what was he promoting? What was he predicting on the screen?
On this 250th anniversary of our country,
Listen.
I would, at the risk of extravagance, go even further to observe America's intrinsically Catholic character.
Listen.
If the claim sounds outrageous, please do not blame me. A man with greater authority than I made it first. That would be Alexis de Tocqueville.
Okay, who was he? On the screen right there. On the screen, look it up, friends. In the New York Times, he wrote, first red box, he noted that Americans in the 1830s rarely engaged in leisurely activities like hunting, dancing, or playing instruments on Sundays. Next, he believed that this quote unquote Sunday rest by law and the religious influence surrounding it were crucial for moderation in democratic society. That's what he was promoting. And friends, I went to the pioneers. Uriah Smith spoke about this man. A.T. Jones spoke about this man. E.J. Wagner spoke about this man.
As Professor Berzer has already observed,
listen now, this is when Michael Knowles would tell you that Jesuits began to control America even from the days of Thomas Jefferson to the present. Listen what he says.
As Professor Berzer has already observed, the Jesuits smuggled the teachings of the Thomists to Thomas Jefferson. And inclined as I am to criticize the Jesuits, we have to admit they're a clever bunch and they get results. It's very impressive.
Oh, yeah? And what has been the aim of Jesuits? My friends, he is commending, exhorting Jesuits and the work of Jesuits. And remember, that was Pope Francis, the first publicly announced Jesuit Pope. The current Pope also belongs to another order that is a cousin, brother, and sister with the Jesuits. Not going there right now. And what is the aim of Jesuits? To overthrow Protestantism, even America, and to make popery world dominant. And the blue words in the middle says that they would be counselors, advisors to kings, presidents, prime ministers, rulers, politicians to shape the policy of nations. Now, not everything Michael Knowles just said I'm going to believe unless I see evidences. I don't see any evidence right now where Jesuits control Thomas Jefferson. I don't see that. I don't see it. Is it there? To be determined. What I'm saying is, he is saying that Jesuits have and are controlling America. That's the point. Don't go off on some tangent. That is the point. Listen to him again.
The leaders of the revolution, the founding fathers, were men who had already been entrusted with public authority.
We're not talking about Thomas Jefferson. That's way back there. Let's talk about now American president, America's vice president, America's politicians, SCOTUS and Congress. He says right now, Catholics control America.
The leaders of the revolution, the founding fathers, were men who had already been entrusted with public authority.
All right.
They were legislators. They were judges. Not many were Catholic by profession, and yet, in retrospect, a distinctly Catholic character begins to appear. This impression is not illusory. It's not just wishful thinking in a room of 1,500 Catholics. We know a tree by its fruit. Catholics today make up a little over 20% of the U.S. population, but we make up 28% of congressmen, 38% of governors, and at least 2/3 of the Supreme Court.
Mercy.
We will hit 78% of the Supreme Court whenever we drag Justice Gorsuch back across the Tiber. Not only is the sitting Vice President Catholic, but every presently viable candidate for president in 2028 of both parties is a baptized Catholic. Few of our forefathers could have predicted it. Only a firm faith in Providence could have permitted it, and yet here we find ourselves, a quarter millennium later, a people and a place so improbably and perfectly suited for each other that not only can a Catholic become president, but an American can even be the Pope. Thank you very much.
Mercy. Not only an American can be the Pope, Pope Leo XIV, but the sitting president of America can pose as a Pope. President Trump posing as a Pope and saying, I want to be a Pope. Beloved, that one segment has so much in it. why would Michael Knowles feel impressed to give us a history lesson and give us a current event report about how Catholics control the population? Catholics, a large part of the US demographic, Catholics in Congress, Catholics in SCOTUS, Catholics as governors of states. That means if a Sunday law is going to be enforced, it comes from Congress, SCOTUS, White House, and then states, governors. Why would he feel impressed to give us a current event report as if Michael Knowles is giving us a State of the Union address? A state, S-O-T-U, the State of the Union address. That's why he said, it is now appearing that America has an intrinsic Catholic character. Those who are live with me now, come on, family. What text is being fulfilled? Now, beloved, let's be pragmatic. Let's be reasonable right now. It is not breaking news that politicians, governors, many of them are affiliated with various religions and denominations. That's not breaking news. So if it's something that is regular, why would Michael Knowles feel impressed to exalt the fact the leaders of our nations are now Catholic, even the vice president? Why would he feel that way? Why? Could it be he's telling you that these Catholics who now sit in high places are going to legislate based on Catholic social teaching? Why would it be necessary to give us a tongue whipping, a tongue lashing? Why would it be necessary to give us a current event report, a state of the Catholic in America's union? Why? He's telling you that they are going to rule based on Catholic religion and not based on America's policies. That's what he's saying. How else can you slice it? How else? That is it. That's why this is so important. And that scripture is Revelation 13, verse 11, verse 12. How does America speak? For the Bible says the nation with two horns like a lamb will speak as a dragon. And how does a nation speak? Through her, do I have it here? Not yet. How does a nation speak? Through her Congress, SCOTUS, and then executive branch, that is the White House. Do you know what came to me as you just saw a glimpse of it? The actual debate, the quasi-debate between Michael Knowles and now deceased Charlie Kirk. It all makes sense now why Charlie Kirk, TPUSA, a prominent platform against Roman Catholicism, had to be taken out of the way. It now makes sense.
It'll be wonderful.
As an evangelical who loves Catholics, I love that you're doing it. But let me just edit what
Here's
you
the
say.
but. Here's the but.
No, it's a big one. You didn't catch it, Michael.
Yeah.
Is that your goal should be to bring people to Jesus, not Catholicism?
Yo, hold on.
Do you see it now?
What's the difference? I don't think.
Now, I've played that clip over and over again. I'm going to touch and move on. It all makes sense. You have to get rid of that one.
I know that. I believe that there are personally some fundamental issues with, like I say, Mariology, transubstantiation, which we're not going to get into. But the biggest one is the papacy. I can't.
You see? And notice, even in his marriage, as Ryan just said, he married Erica Kirk, a Roman Catholic. So be careful who you marry. Remember, Samson, loved Delilah. What happened to Samson? Samson loved Delilah. His parents said, leave Delilah alone. But what did Samson say? Oh, I must get her because she pleased me well. What happened to Samson? She betrayed Samson to the Philistines. Be careful who you shack up with. Who you marry, by the way. Continue.
I personally would not be able to be part of an institution with the figurehead, with a worldview that is so corrupted and opposite of what I think the Bible teaches. And I wouldn't give him the benefit of the doubt. I'd be like, no, I'm actually not part of this. I'm leaving.
But today you're part of the United
Just imagine a national Catholic prayer breakfast, and these statements were being made by Michael Knowles. He would have been looking from the corner of his eyes. Where is Charlie Kirk now? What would he say next to counter what I'm saying? They had to get him out the way.
Take it up higher, yeah.
And then maybe the Pope is corrupted and we write 95 points of complaints and hammer him to a door and get back to the Word.
Well,
Back to the Word. Back to the Word. The protest continues because Charlie Kirk didn't have all the truth, but God gave it to us as SDA Christian. What are we doing with it? At this point, now let me address the most powerful man in Washington, D.C., in the White House, that many people don't know of. He is Vince Haley. He is the one behind Trump's movement for May 17, 2026 to rededicate America to God, or to make America Catholic. He also spoke at the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. What's the connection here? May 17, July 4, 2026, and the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. It's on the screen right there. The most influential advisor. Do you know he's Catholic? Jesuit trained and educated. And what does he say? May 17 is a day of worship. Here he is now. Listen.
So I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak briefly about what the Trump administration is doing to make America's 250th celebration one for the ages. Finally, I wish to emphasize what President Trump said in his 2023 campaign was the most important initiative for the 250th. And that was his call upon the nation's religious communities to pray for our country and our people so that we can rededicate ourselves as one nation under God. Plans are also underway for a once-in-a-lifetime national faith event on the Mall on May 17th. Through scripture and testimony, music and worship, the American people will be invited to share in remembering and giving thanks for the unmistakable hand of God that we have witnessed at work throughout 250 years of our national life. Ask God's blessing for the next 250 years and solemnly rededicate our country as one nation under God, just as President Trump called for.
Okay, I wonder which God, which religion is this? Hear what he says now.
One special note about the date, May 17th. As it turns out, and we didn't plan this, May 17th this year will be exactly 250 years from the date back in 1776 that the Second Continental Congress set aside for a National Day of Prayer and Fasting.
Listen now.
As the original 13 colonies were preparing to declare independence.
Listen now.
And I'm pleased to say and report that just last night, Congress gave unanimous consent to set aside this May 17th as the National Day of Prayer and Fasting.
Beloved, last night, the night before the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, Congress unanimously gave the president permission, approval to go forth with a day of worship, May 17, 2026. That to me is an ensample. That to me is a type. That to me is a dress rehearsal for one day Congress will unanimously, or the majority will enact Sunday worship by law, not at a state level, not at the local level, but from the federal level. That's why when they have these breakfasts, beware. It was at a breakfast John the Baptist lost his head for being a Protestant reformer by Herod, Herodias, her daughter Salome. It was at a feast when Pharaoh beheaded the baker in the time of Joseph and the butler. Continue. What did Paula White say will also happen? And on May 17, 2026, not only prayer, not only worship, hear what she says about baptism and communion.
Did I tell y'all that we're rededicating this nation to God on May 17th? One nation under God. Come on. Did I tell you that we're going to have worship and we're going to preach the gospel and baptisms? Come on, and communion and...
Mercy. That's clear. It is clear. And that's why now here is a statement I was looking for a few moments ago. How does America speak? We are here, my friends. We are here. Wake up, my family. Now I've come to this last segment of Midday Power Surge. Does anyone know who Mike Meckler is? Mark Meckler. Mark Meckler. He's connected to the Convention of States. Listen carefully. It's in this segment, Mark Meckler, his allies are going to say, it's time for Christian America to completely unite church and state together, implement Sunday worship by law, and become intolerant to non-believers. What? Intolerant to non-believers? Beloved, intolerance to non-believers, it is Protestant America. No. Apostate Protestant America revealing the spirit of the dragon. So both Catholics in America and so-called Protestants in America are now revealing the intrinsic, innate, draconian spirit. Wake up, all right? Notice here the interview. Come on, preachers.
Today, here to weigh in is President of Convention of States Project, Mark Meckler. Mark, thanks for being here this morning.
Nice to be with you this
morning. So answer that question. How would our founders look at the state of our republic and our Constitution right now?
I think they'd be really disturbed.
And what is the listen to this. Listen.
It says the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution or shall call for a convention of proposing amendments. Now, you run a group called Convention of States, trying to build a movement to call for a state-based convention to amend the Constitution. Talk about this.
Well, so right now there are 4 million people involved in this movement. It takes 34 states to call a convention. So far.
Mercy. Beloved, I want you all to reason with me right now. Family, let's reason right now. Since their objective, which I'm going to play later on, is to be intolerant to non-Christians, what would stand in their way of not granting non-Christians religious and civil liberties? Would it not be the U.S. Constitution? So if they were to get their way, to rewrite the U.S. Constitution, what law would they put there? If they get their way to amend the federal U.S. Constitution, what will happen to our liberties and freedoms if we don't go along with their diabolical agenda? Since they're calling for Sunday worship by law, what on the federal level? What if they were to get the opportunity to rewrite the U.S. Constitution at the Convention of States? What will come to America? This is Mark Meckler. Hear what he says now. It's time to be a lot less tolerant. Bring back Sunday blue laws. Listen to this.
right? No, we need to be a lot more intolerant. If you look at the history of the United States of America and you look at the founding of this country, I'm not suggesting we should do this, but back at the founding of this country, before we were a nation.
So why mention it? Why mention it? Why mention it? If I say, well, you know, we shouldn't steal, but, you know, it's okay to steal, why mention it?
Right? No, we need to be a lot more intolerant. If you look at the history of the United States of America and you look at the founding of this country, I'm not suggesting we should do this, but back at the founding of this country, before we were a nation, most states, colonies back then, had laws that required you to be in church on Sunday. Right? They were not tolerant of non-believers. And so this idea that we should just accept everybody and everything, that's a modern idea. It comes from Satan and it is destroying our country.
Wait. This man just said that if we are tolerant of non-believers, that came from Satan. So now we must be intolerant to non-Christians. Is that not from Satan? You can't make this up. Are these men listening to themselves? Who forces the conscience? God or Satan? If God was a God of force, why create Adam and Eve with choices? Of all these you may freely eat. Of this one, don't eat. Why give man choice? Force removes choice altogether. Now, this movement is not isolated to Mark Meckler, the Convention of States, because somebody else is involved with it. It's Kevin Roberts. And Kevin Roberts is also calling for a return to blue laws. But notice, he says a uniform day of rest from the federal level. As I've always said, that is not a return of the blue laws. Blue laws were not federal for the most part, only state and local. This is the mark of the beast you're calling for. Imagine that. In the push for Sunday law, federal level, the mark of the beast, we're now hearing, let us be intolerant. Lord have mercy. If that does not scream, with trumpet tone, America is now whispering as a dragon, nothing else does. Kevin Roberts on the screen. Uniform day of rest, federal level. Sunday blue laws, we get that. Get back to church, same thing. Kevin Roberts, Convention of States, all right? Federal government, there it is. Rewrite the U.S. Constitution. Here he is now.
There's a whole bucket of longer term objectives we need to be thinking about. And we just need to keep as a tool in our toolbox some equally radical ideas that are very sound and legitimate, like the Convention of States.
All right.
Just because Trump and Vance won doesn't mean that we should give up on that project. In fact, I am told by some Convention of State friends they're tuning in to the live stream, so thank you. But the points in Heritage, maybe having something to do with my being there the last few years, has become a sponsor of the Convention of States, because we realize the objective isn't just short term, it's long term. And I know that President Trump and Vice President Vance are thinking about that.
So this is a cowboy Catholic, a sponsorer involved in the Convention of States to rewrite the U.S. Constitution. Everything I covered before confirmed what the role of Roman Catholics are, what their objective is for America. What is the only piece of document that stands in the way of Catholics completely taking over America and enslaving us, forcing us to accept Roman Catholic false worship? What is that document? The U.S. Constitution. And their hands are in that movement to rewrite the U.S. Constitution. Evangelicals and Catholics have joined to overthrow our liberties. They're telling us we must be more ruthless, more rigid. words from Kevin Roberts, words from J.D. Vance, and now Mark Meckler. The dots are connected. Where's my rooster? Where's my rooster? Inspiration says, a Sunday law comes when you see a movement to bring about a religious amendment to the U.S. Constitution. A second statement to confirm that. Last sentence, a religious amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Sunday law, mark of the beast. Mark Meckler, listen again.
But back at the founding of this country, before we were a nation, most states, colonies back then, had laws that required you to be in church on Sunday, right? They were not tolerant of non-believers. And so this idea that we should just accept everybody and everything, that's a modern idea. It comes from Satan, and it is destroying our country.
Preacher man, I want you all to realize that these are indeed the last days of Earth's history.
We have to become a lot less tolerant.
Mercy.
We are way too tolerant as a people.
Just imagine a professed Christian leader saying, a preacher, Mark Meckler, what denomination? Mark Meckler, what denomination? Just imagine this. A professed Christian minister saying, we must be more like Satan. And everybody in the pew gave him a firm round of applause. What? We must be like Satan, the dragon, the serpent.
We have to become a lot less tolerant. We are way too tolerant as a people and a nation. And look, there's biblical precedent for that. They didn't tolerate this kind of behavior in ancient Israel. They didn't tolerate it in Jesus's time. Jesus was very direct about this kind of stuff. We teach this incredibly nice, sanitized version, I would say a feminized version of Jesus. This is a man who made a cat of nine tails and went in to kick the tables over and screamed at people and called them vipers for sinning, for doing terrible things against the law of God. And we don't do that as a nation anymore. And instead what we do is like...
Did you all catch? This man just equated Christ walking into the temple and cleansing that temple from apostates and abomination to we now being intolerant. That means Christ was intolerant to non-believers. This man is bearing false witness against Christ. He is, I won't say lucky. I won't say lucky. But my friends, this man should go on his knees tonight, confess and repent of this sin, because God could have smitten him down dead that day. We must become now intolerant to non-believers, those who don't want to follow us. Do you know there were two men with that spirit? Do you remember James and John in Luke chapter 9? When the people were refusing to accept Christ. What did James and John say? Lord, should we call down fire and brimstone to destroy non-believers? What did Christ say? You don't know of whose spirit you are of. James, yes, and John. They had a wrong spirit, Satan's spirit. What a nail in a... If that's clear, my friends, tell me. Is that a nail in a sure place? Luke 9, James and John, sons of thunder, to destroy non-believers. That's the spirit of Satan. And beloved, that happened at the closing scene of Christ's earthly ministry. Where's my rooster? And that's why I believe we are now at the close of this earth's history. On the screen right there. Okay, beloved, I'm going to share with you. The very statement of Mark Meckler is not new. Listen what this says. This is great controversy. During the colonial times of America, okay, in the Northeast, red words, quote, it was toleration that made the world anti-Christian. Do you see it now? And the church never took harm by the punishment of heretics. Are those not the words of Mark Meckler? It's because we are tolerant why America is immoral, licentious, not spiritual. Those words are not new. Satan inspired men in the past in America with the same rhetoric. It was toleration that made the world anti-Christian. It was toleration that makes America so deplorable. So now Mark Meckler is saying, and J.D. Vance and others, Kevin Roberts and others, it's time to be less tolerant. We must become intolerant. You cannot make this up, friends. Last days. It says in the past, church and state united. Then what happened? Persecution. So what is coming for God's people right now? This is midday power surge, preparation day. Next statement. Beloved, in this segment, I'm going to build upon the point, toleration, intoleration, GC 442. The prediction that America will speak as a dragon, like the papacy, red words, plainly foretells a development, of what, friends? A development of the spirit of intolerance. The spirit of intolerance and persecution that happened before. And what must we expect next once we see and hear of the spirit of intolerance? Blue words. It indicates the authority of this nation is to exercise and enforce an observance that will give homage to the papacy. What is that? Sunday worship by law. I say humbly, that's a nail in a sure place. Next, GC 441. Beloved, this is the juxtaposition. In short, the founders of America, it says, they fled from the old world. They were running away from royal oppression. That's state power. They fled from priestly intolerance. It's right there, friends. You can't make this up. They fled from priestly intolerance and they came to America, established America that would be foreign to that, a contrast to that. That was 1776, and now in 2026, the reverse is taking place. Now we're hearing of royal oppression and priestly intolerance. Humbly I say, that's a nail in a sure place. Now, what must we do? Beloved, listen what Sister White writes. Beloved, this is how I know it's time for aggressive, effective evangelism. This is what makes our message have power and urgency. Don't take it from me. Listen what we're told. Red words, second sentence. The scoffers, the mockers, and cynics have always said, the prediction that in America there will be religious intolerance will never take place. You will never hear and see leaders in church and state saying it's time to be intolerant. That's what Sister White said the scoffers, the mockers, and cynics would say. Second sentence, red words. But she said now, as we begin to see and hear movements and statements calling for church and state union, enforce Sunday observance, return to Sunday blue laws, Sunday rest by law at the federal level, the event so long doubted, The event that was once disbelieved is seen to be approaching, and the third angel's message, the everlasting gospel, will produce an effect, power, thrust, which it could not have had before. Where's my rooster? That's a nail in a sure place. Yes, friends. What a powerful midday power to lesson. And that's why we are told now, friends, the protest of Spires was a solemn witness against what? Religious intolerance. So where is the protest today? Against Mark Meckler, against Michael Knowles, against Kevin Roberts, J.D. Vance, and the rest, against the Pope, against Bishop Barron. And where is the protest? The protest of Spires in the 1500s was a solemn witness against religious intolerance. Men everywhere must have the right to worship God according to the dictates of their consciences. But now we're hearing we must be intolerant to non-believers. Where is the protest? That's why I always say the protest continues. The Reformation continues. My last point will bring us to a point of self-examination. Inspiration says, the final sifting out among professed SDAs, the last shaking and shaking out among professed Christians will take place at the mark of the beast crisis. We will know when we are near when you begin to hear and see in a movement and public statements, we must be intolerant to other people. Here it is. Page 602 of the book Great Controversy. Listen, from top. When the testing time shall come, those who have made God's word their rule of life will be revealed. Then the statement says, in summertime, you see no difference between evergreens and other trees. But when autumn comes, when winter comes, the blast of winter, the evergreens remain unchanged, while other trees are stripped. What a word. Stripped of their foliage. Then Sister White makes the application. Blue words. So the false-hearted professor may not now be distinguished from the real Christian. But the time is just upon us when the difference will be apparent. How may we know, Lord? Red words. Let opposition arise. Let bigotry and intolerance again bear sway. Let persecution be kindled, and the half-hearted, hypocritical will waver and yield the faith. But the true Christian will stand firm as a rock, his faith stronger, his hope, one more time, his hope brighter than in the days of prosperity. Do I hear amen? Are we now seeing and hearing the bigotry, intolerance gaining sway in America from Roman Catholics, apostate Protestants, and evangelicals and state leaders? We are here. Which brings me to my rooster. Which brings me to Gethsemane. That's where we are, my friends. What did Christ say to those disciples? Watch and pray. The flesh is weak. The spirit indeed is willing. But they fell asleep. And notice, they all appeared to be godly. But when the crisis came, when Judas' church Roman armies, high priests came and captured Christ, at that moment, you saw the evergreen. Mercy. Jesus. Evergreen. That's why Christ said, if they did that with the old trees, what would they do in the green? And then was seen the trees that were not evergreen. The disciples, they fled. Peter denied Jesus, and then came the rooster. It crowed twice. Peter denied Christ 3 times. Will you be an evergreen, or will you be like Peter, denying Jesus? And while he received a second chance, we will not receive a second chance at the Sunday law crisis when tested. Now we're getting dress rehearsals. At that time, our decision will be a final decision. If I were to ask you what's your takeaway, what would it be today? 689-777-5198. 689-777-5198. If you delay to watch and pray, like Peter, you will deny Jesus. And like Judas, Christ, you will betray. It's time to be an evergreen. Mute the line, preacher. No phone calls. My time is up. Amen. My prayer is, Lord, make me an evergreen. What is your prayer today? What is your decision today? If it is, Lord, make me an evergreen, punch those words in the comment section. Lord, make me an evergreen. If they did this to dry trees, what will they do to the green? If they have done this to dry trees, what will they do to the green? If they do this to dry trees, what will they do to... Christ is an evergreen. Make me an evergreen. And by the way, watch this now. Watch this. I'm going to trouble my family. What does the color blue typify in the Bible? What does the color blue typify in the Bible? Come on, comment section. The law. Look at the chat now. Let me see if it is going to be on fire when I get to one color. Next one, warming you up. What does the color purple typify in the Bible? Purple now, purple. 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 All right, purple. Okay, John. Royalty. Purple. Worship. All right. What about red? What does red typify in the Bible? Red, come on, red. 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 Sacrifice. What else? Red. Victory over sin. Red. Blood. Blood is life. Life. Spiritual life. Red. Blood. Victory over sin. Spiritual life. Amen. What is white typify in the Bible? White. Come on, white. What does white point to in the Bible? White. 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 You see, Patricia, you can't wait. You can't wait. You had to jump the gun, right, Patricia? Okay, white means what? Purity, righteousness. So what does green represent? Green. The law, royalty, worship, spiritual life, victory over sin, purity. What about green? Green represents faith. And what did Christ say to Peter in Luke 22? Simon, Simon, let this be the takeaway now as we close. Simon, Simon, put your name there, because Peter once said, I will go with you. I'll stand with you in the last days. What are many of us saying? Like Peter. But what did Christ say to Peter? Simon, Simon, Satan desires to have you, that he might sift you as wheat, but I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. Yes. And when thou art converted, go and strengthen thy brethren. Faith, the faith of Christ is what we need. Green, the green grass. Yes. O ye of little faith, green faith, Sister White. Green cord, faith. I can't go there right now. Faith in the ability of Christ. Faith in the ability of Christ to save us amply, fully, entirely, in his way, in his time, is the faith of Jesus. Amen. Get ready, remain ready, get others ready. The protest continues, Reformation continues. Happy Sabbath when it comes. Maranatha.